The views expressed on this broadcast of the Take 12 Recovery Radio Show do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting or its affiliates. KHLT and Take12Radio.com are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
Remember me, I'm the one down on the floor, telling these people that I ain't there anymore. Calling in the street, just about to lose my mind.
Welcome to Walking Through the Big Book with Chris Schroeder and Monty Meyer. And now, here's those two guys who investigate prior to contempt, Chris and the Monty'man.
Well, greetings, friends, recovery scallywags, all of you out there. We're doing this thing one day at a time, one show at a time, one Diet Pepsi at a time, as in my case, right at the very moment as I savor this wonderful brew in front of me. We have I just want to let people know, we have a new show right now called The Coffee Experiment, Chris, and that thing is going on Wednesdays, and we have a different kind of coffee or beverage that that we introduce ourselves to and tell the listeners about, and then we have it up on the webpage where they can get it through Amazon, and that helps to a little bit. It helps to sponsor that show. I'm drinking right now a Diet Pepsi with lemon in it. I've never had that, and I got to tell you, I was kidding about it being. It's absolutely horrible. So I guess Pepsi won't be sponsoring us, but it is a great day to be clean and sober. This is Walking Through the Big Book with Chris Schroeder. I'm your co-host, the Monty'man. Chris, how the heck are you, buddy?
Oh, really good today, Monty. Really good.
We have really. This has been such a great thing. I was at the webpage that this broadcast from yesterday, and I was looking at all the play buttons. Usually we just have one play button on a page, but we've been putting them all on there so people don't have to go back to an archive or something. And I was thinking, God is so good, man. Did you ever think for a minute, 20, 30, whatever years ago, that you would be part of this great movement of teaching, this wonderful program that saves so many lives? Did you ever think you would ever do something like that?
Monty, back in the 80s, no one was really asking for my opinion on anything. As a matter of fact, they were saying, would you just shut up? Would you stop talking? Would you just please go away? So to be asked to do something like this is, quite a turnaround. Absolutely.
Oh, it's wonderful, and I want to mention to the listeners too, really quickly. Would you tell the listeners about your website, Afflicted and Affected? We don't talk about that too much on this show, and I think we need to do that.
Absolutely. Afflicted and Affected has a specific agenda, and basically what that is we try to track down the absolute top people that revolve around alcoholism and addiction treatment. The professionals, the researchers, the people that own the treatment centers, run the treatment centers, different services that are available, different products that are available, and we try to interview these people because I think a real educated recovered alcoholic is of more use than one that doesn't really know. So if we're to be of maximum service to those about us, I think it's incumbent upon us to learn what we can about some of these processes. Recovery really is a continuum, and it goes from active alcoholism or active drug addiction to long-term contented and happy sobriety and recovery. But usually in the beginning part of that continuum, many of us have to be exposed to, or have to expose people to treatment or detox or therapeutics of one kind or another, and to understand a little bit about that really is the point of the show, to try to talk about best practices and things that, recovery resources that are available out there. So it's mainly the professionals that we interview on Afflicted and Affected.
Tell us just a couple of people that you've had on.
Oh, we just did a show with Andrea Barthwell, who was the deputy drug czar. We've had Michael Miller, the president of ASAM, on there. We've had Ron Hunsaker, who's the president of NATAP. We get to a lot of people. We've had Ben Levinson and the people who were running Origins on there. We've had Mark Houston from Mark Houston Recovery Center. We've had a lot of people from the Karen Treatment Center and group on there. And again, we've also talked about a lot of services and products that are available. We just did a show with eRehab Coach, the people who run that, and that's a service that you can operate through your cell phone or your iPhone or your computer. It's kind of a aftercare support. We had Treatment Seekers on. There's a website that's going to go live very, very soon that's going to be like the blue book of treatment centers. You can fill out, basically you fill out an assessment form on what you're doing and what you need help with, and the computer program will match you with the most specific rehabs that will pertain to your recovery and treatment processes. So, I mean, there's just been so many people. We've done about 110 shows, and they're all in the archive section, the past show section on Afflicted and Affected. I would recommend that anyone interested just leaf through there, and you're going to find somebody that that's of interest to you.
And folks, you can go there by going to www.theafflictedandaffected.com. You can also go to our links page and click on it as well. In fact, if you're on the page that the show is broadcasting from, there is a link right below Chris's picture there that says Visit the Afflicted and Affected. Okay, all this stuff, a lot of this stuff didn't even exist back in the 1930s. We had, as one person said it, we didn't have alcoholics back then. We had drunks. And so one of the things that is so wonderful to be able to do here at take12radio.com, folks, is to bring to you every week this great, and I'm not saying this because I'm patting either Chris or myself on the back, but it really is. God has done a great thing by really allowing us to be stewards over this show and bring to you really the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, page by word, page by page. And Chris does such a great job of this. So we left off. We're still in How It Works, and tell us where we left off here, Chris.
All right. Well, Monty, what we talked about in the last couple of weeks were the inventory process, the four-step inventory process. In the third step, in the first three steps, we come to the conclusion that we're powerless over alcohol. In other words, we've got a mind that'll take us back to alcohol and a body that will ensure it kills us. We come to believe, we start to see that there may be a power that we can access. And this book is pretty clear that power is God. And in the third step, we make a decision to try to access that power. We understand that without some power in our lives, we're going to stay revolving in the alcoholic web, and we're not going to see the light of day just because we want to or need to. There's got to be a power that we don't possess that we access. So in the third step, we make a decision to access that power. That decision is then followed by a commitment, and that commitment is really the steps. In the fourth step, the first thing we need to do is identify what's our problem, what's wrong with us, why do we keep shooting ourselves in the foot, what's the exact nature of the issues, the defects of character, the flaws in our makeup that continue to plague us and ensure that we're never going to get anywhere. We need to inventory those and identify them. So there's a resentment inventory that deals with our anger, that deals with our hatred, that deals with our resentment. And we look at the nature of resentment, and each of us are specifically asked to do writing on certain aspects of the resentment. What's the nature of self that causes these resentments, and then we're to look at what is our part. What is our part in the anger? And there always is some. Then we looked at the fear inventory. We looked at why we had anxiety, trepidation, a sense of impending doom. Why are we handicapped by this just sense of we can't deal. It's going to go wrong. The future is uncertain and scary. We need to look at that. So the object of the inventory is to closely examine the nature of fear and why we have fear. And all through these inventories are prayer directives. We're to really, because we've turned our will and our lives over to the care of God, we need to have God as part of this inventory process and ask at certain points for certain things. Where we left off last week is basically we're looking at the sex inventory, basically the relationship inventory, with an emphasis on sex. Where have we caused harm? And I'm going to pick up on the bottom of page 68. That's from a first edition. Now, about sex, many of us needed an overhauling there. That's a pretty strong statement. If you know anything about mechanics, Monty, what is an overhauling? Let's say you need to overhaul your pickup truck or something. What is that?
If my pickup truck needs an overhaul, it means that it needs to be rebuilt, really down almost from scratch and totally renewed. I need a new carburetor. I need new cables. I need the whole 9 yards.
Absolutely, it is not a mere tune-up.
No.
So as an alcoholic, if our sex conduct and our intimate lives need a complete overhauling, that means we definitely need to rebuild this thing from the ground up. We've been running on selfishness and self-centeredness. We've made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be harmed. We've harmed people coming from a foundation of selfishness and self-centeredness. So we need to honestly go back and look at our intimate relationships. Now, I don't believe that this inventory is only for people we've been sexually intimate with. I think that it's quite appropriate for certain friendships, even certain family members. Anywhere where there's a close bond with someone, it would do us well to inventory in the way it lays it out, because we need to see how we're showing up. How are we showing up out in the world? If we were showing up in a really great way, we'd be doing a whole lot better than we are right now.
Yeah.
That's the best thing I can say to somebody who doesn't feel that they need to do this or doesn't want to do this. Well, how's your way working?
Yeah.
They usually are walking for the next 2 years because of a DUI, or they're on thin ice with the family and the employer. That's usually how we come into a support fellowship, or that's how we are when we're about to ask someone to sponsor us or something. We're not doing real well. So again, it's a difficult concept to get with, that you are your own problem. Your problems are not coming at you, they're coming from you. It's difficult. So an inventory process is really about showing you on paper that your problems are not coming at you, they're coming from you. Because after you take responsibility for these things that you find in this inventory, that sets the stage for some serious progress. It sets the stage for recreating your life with God's help. So when they talk about sex, it says, but above all, we try to be sensible on this question. It is so easy to get way off track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes, absurd extremes perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. Then we have those voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. I think he's making a poke at Freud here.
Mm-hmm.
They think we do not have enough of it or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. Here's the important part. What can we do about them? Now, this paragraph basically paints the picture of we're not looking for a high moral judgment as far as the act of sex is concerned. It basically says in here that we let God be the ultimate judge. But what we need to do is we need to get down to causes and conditions of why is this harming us? Why is this harming others? That's a very, very important point. Bill didn't think it would be useful for people to believe that those coming out of this book wanted you to just become completely abstinent as far as sex is concerned. To become completely celibate. That's not the point, and nor should we just become absolutely free and loose with it.
Yeah.
What we need to do is we need to bring God into our sex conduct, and it basically says that we do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. So as far as what type of sex someone has or who they have it with, we're not the arbiters of that. But what we want to do is we want to bring you back to the question of where is this causing harm? Because it's the harm that generates the guilt, the shame, and the remorse. The guilt, the shame, and the remorse cause our spiritual conditions to erode. And it's by having an eroded spiritual condition that brings us back to drinking alcohol.
Right.
It's a point of really looking deeply into these relationships that we've had, figuring out what we've done wrong, and then moving forward. So it's a very constructive inventory. It's not a moral judgment. It's more of a constructive inventory. Let's figure out where it hasn't worked in the past.
And don't you think, Chris, that like you said, we bring God into this situation. We look at what is being harmed and so forth and so on. And don't you think, this has been my experience, that the moral end of it kind of takes care of itself anyway when we start involving God in this whole process?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's no overt harm being caused by your behavior, you're almost automatically moral. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have relationships with people or you can't enjoy sex. You just need to do it more on God's terms than coming from a foundation of selfishness and self-centeredness.
Like any of our behaviors.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what I've seen in certain support groups a lot is every once in a while there'll be predators. There will be people who are all about going to the meetings and finding a pretty susceptible newcomer. Someone that they can have, because they're very, very involved in multiple sexual experiences, and they'll come in and they'll prey on the newcomer. They'll tell the newcomer whatever they need to hear to be able to get into an intimate relationship with them. That's something that I don't necessarily need to be the arbiter of that.
Right.
But I'll tell you what, that is about the quickest way for someone to relapse if they're really an alcoholic that there is. Because if we continue to cause harm out there, it's very specific in this inventory, if we continue to cause harm out there, we're going to drink if we're really an alcoholic. Now, every once in a while there'll be predators who last for years in the support group meetings. They are not alcoholic or they are not drug addicts, because this process makes very, very clear that if you continue to cause harm to others, you're going to get drunk. So if you don't get drunk, you're obviously not an alcoholic, and you're in the rooms with a specific agenda. and people should understand that, and people should be aware of that. And maybe we're not the arbiters of anyone's sex conduct, but we can certainly try to protect the newcomer. They're supposedly under our care at certain points, especially when we're working with them. And you'll see the good sponsors or spiritual advisors warning either against preying on people or against people that might prey on them.
Yeah.
So, that's not really arbitrating sexual conduct. That's just coming clear out of the book on harm, the harm that can be caused. Here's the directive for the inventory. This is what it tells us to do on paper. It says, we've reviewed our own conduct over the years past. What I'll do with somebody that I'm taking through the steps is I'll say, listen, write a couple of paragraphs on each specific instance. You're going to have some guilt. You're going to, you ask God to help you put down the people you need to put down on this inventory, and people are going to come to you. So do a short review of the relationship. So it asks you to do that. We reviewed our conduct over the years past. Now, here are 3 questions. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, and inconsiderate? Notice that it says where. It doesn't say were. So if we were in a relationship, remember we need a complete overhauling. If we have been in relationships, we've been selfish, we've been dishonest, and we've been inconsiderate, whether we think so or not. So look, and where you were, you write that down. That's basically question 1, 2, and 3 after the review. Then it says, whom did we hurt? That's basically question number 5. Now, in this question, who did we hurt? Obviously, we've hurt the person. They're on the top of the harms list.
Yeah.
However, there's collateral damage in these relationships. We might have hurt their parents. We might have hurt their spouses. We might have hurt their children in this completely self-centered, in need of overhauling type of a relationship. There's going to be collateral damage. We list those people out. Then it asks, did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Most of the time we do. A lot of this use sex as a weapon, or we're trophy hunters, or it makes us feel like we're more of a man. If we have a longer record, and a lot of times when you're operating from that platform, you're going to cause jealousy, you're going to cause suspicion, you're going to cause bitterness. Just a little bit from my own personal experience. How I would operate, Monty, is I would find someone that would be susceptible, to my charms, whatever they might have been at that particular time. It was usually somebody that acted even the slightest bit interested in me. I would do what I needed to do to get the deal done, and then I would try to figure out how to extricate myself from that relationship. If I wasn't totally attracted to them, I tried to figure out how to get out of it. And listen, when you do that to women, what happens is you're coming off like they're really special, and then you're showing them that they're actually not, and it causes a lot of harm, to the women. Now the women have different kind of problems, maybe the same, maybe different kind of problems and harms that they have in their relationships. Maybe they use sex as a bartering tool or something, But that's not why God gave us the sex instinct.
Right.
God gave us the sex instinct, I believe, 2 things I know. One of them is we need that instinct for the race to survive.
Yeah.
If we didn't want to do it, we wouldn't do it, and then there wouldn't be any children, and mankind would have died out. So God made it enjoyable, okay? God made us want to do it, and God made it enjoyable. Those are God-given aspects of our sexuality. We complicate it coming from a place of selfishness, deciding that we want it on our terms. It doesn't matter if it's going to hurt anybody or if it's appropriate or if it's considerate of other people. We want it the way we want it, when we want it, And that's where self comes in. And if God was more directing our sex conduct, it's not like we wouldn't get any sex. It would just be of a better quality and cause less harm.
Yeah.
So selfishness, self-centeredness, again, that's the root of our troubles. So we look at where we've aroused jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness. Okay, that's question 6, 7, and 8, I believe. And number it out on a piece of paper. Write it out. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have. It says, did we unjustifiably arouse? So if you did, you write that out. And it says, where were we at fault? That would be question number 9. What should we have done instead? That would be question number 10. Notice that it says, what should we have done instead? Not what could we have done instead. What could we have done instead? Probably nothing, because we were being driven by 100 forms of selfishness, fear, resentment, and self-seeking. So we might have even been doing the best we could have at that point in time, because we were a prey to our character defects, and we were caught up in an alcoholic struggle that we didn't fully understand. So maybe we couldn't have done anything better, but what should we have done instead? And you write out, well, maybe I should have been honest with that woman instead of making her believe that there was a possibility of a long-term relationship and then dumping her, 24 hours after the fact. Maybe I just should have been honest, about my feelings. And it might be as simple as that. It might be as complicated as what I should have done is I should have invited God into every one of my relationships and operated, the way He would have me be and do what He would have me do. But again, that's what we should have been doing.
Right.
We're only getting access to the power of God as we go through these steps.
And you know what, Chris? I think a lot of folks in working with sponsees myself, they get a funny look on their face when, I can use some strong language sometimes to say, when we do some of these behaviors with members of the opposite sex, it's a form of abuse. It's sexual abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, and I think sometimes in the things that we do, when we do what we do, when we want to do it, when we want to do it, we don't realize how abusive that is to the other individual.
There may be totally consensual recreational sex out there, Monty. There may be. I've never seen it. Always, in my experience, emotions are involved.
Yeah.
Okay? It's an intimate action. We're instinctually monogamous on a number of levels, especially women. And if we operate outside the parameters that we were designed as human beings to operate, there's going to be collateral damage.
Yeah.
And it's that collateral damage. If we continue to perpetuate that collateral damage, that puts our spiritual condition in peril, and we can drink, and for us to drink is to die.
Yeah.
So it's vitally important that we get this under control. It says we get this all down on paper, and we looked at it. So after the inventory, after it's all down on paper, study it. Do some meditation on it. You need to really see what kind of patterns have evolved within your own conduct with others. And then this is the sex ideal, or this is the intimacy ideal, or this is the friendship ideal. You can put ideals together for anything that you want to, because it's a great exercise. Here he gives us an idea to put our sex ideal together.
Uh-huh.
And it says here, in this way we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation, each of the inventories, to this test. Was it selfish or not? And 90% of the time, all of them are going to be selfish.
Yeah.
Now, this is a prayer directive. We ask God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. So after we've put down our ideal. We've already seen what doesn't work. We see what happens when we're operating from a foundation of selfishness and self-centeredness. Now we write down the attributes that we would like to show up at the next party with, or the attributes that we would like to bring the special person or persons in our life. How do we want to show up? Obviously, we've seen the destructive nature of some of these things doing the inventory. So what we do is we put down attributes. We put down how the way we want to be perceived, the way we want to interact with others. We write that down as an ideal. Here's a great promise that's not in the book. You attract what you are. If you're a miserable, conniving, fanatical, insane individual, that's usually the type of people you're going to be attracting. So if you're very, very selfish in your relationships, you're going to attract very, very selfish people, or very, very codependent people, as the case may be. If you get to a point where you're really healthy and really spiritual, and God is really working through your life, that's what's going to become attracted to you. So you attract kind of what you are. So it's important for us to improve. We're in the middle of a complete rebuild. We want to put it all back together correctly so that we're not causing harm and we're getting some real value, some real value out of our intimate relationships. We remembered that always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. Whatever our sex ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. Remember, we're asking God to help mold our ideals and help us live up to them. That can be part of your morning prayer ritual if you want. Mm-hmm. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in so doing. A lot of times, the amends that revolve around our sex conduct have to be approached very, very carefully. You do not drive 4 towns over, knock on some woman's door that you were in a crazy relationship with 10 years ago. The husband answers the door and you say, "Excuse me, is Bunny here? I need to cover off some sex harms." I mean, you can't cause other harms. You also, can't blankly, admit to every impropriety in the world to somebody and crush them emotionally in doing so. You have to be very, very careful with these amends. And when we get to the amends part of this process, we'll see very, very clearly how to make those amends. But it's not something that you want to run right out and do right after a 4-step. You need some guidance. You need a lot more work with God. It's a real good idea to be going through this with someone that's experienced and to not run off like a crazy man making amends to your last 13 girlfriends right in a row just to see what would happen. That can be foolish.
And I think I've seen this happen, especially with guys. I don't know what it is. It seems to me that when we have a conflict or we've caused harm, and when we come to the place where we realize we need to take care of that, we go out full bore. We want to get rid of that problem now. We don't want to have any issues. Just go take care. And some people just aren't ready to hear it yet.
Well, it also says we're not sweeping off our side of the street and then pushing it over on our neighbor.
Yeah.
Okay. We need to be very, very considerate of others. We need to show restraint sometimes. We need to be very, very specific about placing other people's welfare ahead of our own. Yes, we should make amends, but we need to think very, very clearly with these sex harms amends whether or not it's going to cause someone more suffering for us to approach them than not.
Yeah.
So again, it's really a good idea to do this with someone who has some experience.
Sure.
In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. If we're turning our willing our lives over to the care of God, and then we're seeking through prayer and meditation to improve our contact with God, asking for God to be our director, our principal, and our Father, there needs to be some communication back and forth. Prayer is easy to understand. The meditative practices are vital also, because sometimes it's in meditation that the answers come to us. With very few people does God speak in first person.
Mm-hmm.
Usually we have to divine God's will through our intuitive capacity, or through other people, or seeing the wisdom. What the Oxford group would do is they would sit in meditation, and they would ask a question, or they would wait for guiding thoughts. They would write them down on a piece of paper, these guiding thoughts. Then they would check them with the four absolutes, which are
right.
absolute purity. Is this thought or this decision or this action absolutely pure? Is it absolutely selfless? Is it absolutely honest? Is it absolutely loving? I believe those are the four absolutes.
Uh-huh.
And if it was a yes to all of those, they would believe that to be a guided thought, and that's how they communicated with God. The early Oxford group. Mm-hmm. There's a pamphlet, a wonderful pamphlet called "How to Talk to God," that was published, back in the 30s by Oxford group members, and that's how they did it. That was kind of left out of the big book. It was more kind of left open how to communicate with God, but that's how they did it back then. And more has been revealed. There's religious practices that are have specific disciplines about how you do this, and all of those are well and fine. But what you need to do is you need to be seeking from the spirit part of your nature the right thought or the right action in each of these things. The right answer will come if we want it.
There it is, right there. There's the there's the thing that qualifies it. If we want it. And how many times do we go to God and ask for guidance, but deep down inside we're still looking for what we want and not His guidance?
If God's running my sex life, I may never get any action. You'll hear that from a newcomer. No, the action that you're going to get is going to be more God-directed and more substantial and more intimate than anything you've had before. Picking people up in bars. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And that's what you come to find out when you do this. Here's something that always has gotten me. People want to give opinions based on experiences that they've never had.
Yeah.
You go into a step meeting in any of the recovery support fellowships, and you'll hear people one after another sharing about their opinion on certain steps. Well, I've got experience on not living the steps, and I've got experience living the steps. Okay, my experience living the steps trumps your opinion, because if you haven't done the steps, you don't know what they're gonna be about. You've only got an opinion on an experience you've never had. So many people want to argue with me about a step, my own experience on a step, one step or another. That can't possibly be true. Well, have you ever done this step? Well, no, but it still can't possibly be true. Well, you're giving me an opinion on an experience you've never had. Why would I want to even listen to you? I've actually done this. I've actually experienced it, and I'm sharing my experience, my strength, and my hope. That's what I'm told to do. Yet people will have problems with that because they've got some preconceived notion about what this process involves, and they've never experienced it, so it's a bizarre preconception about this process, and sometimes they don't even know it. I mean, how do you know what you don't know? So for anyone out there who has any issue with any of the things you and I are talking about, Monty, I would say studying this is a waste of time. Experiencing it is what this whole thing is about.
Yeah.
You know what we are? We're like signposts, okay?
Uh-huh.
And a lot of people that read a lot of books and, go to a lot of step meetings and hear what they're doing is they're collecting signs. The signs aren't important. What's important is where the signs point to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Sometimes they're missing the forest because they're collecting the trees.
Yeah, you bet.
And you see that so often. This workshop that we're doing is important only if it can help convince or motivate someone into gaining their own personal experience with this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you do these things, there's a series of promises that are going to come true. They're remarkable promises, and we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start, because it could mean the difference between your life and your death,
mm-hmm.
But it's certainly gonna mean the difference between living a very unsatisfactory life and living a very satisfactory life. That's what this process really offers. God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with others is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice. Now, here's a warning. There's also reverse promises in here. There's wonderful promises, and then there's reverse promises. These warnings are saying, if you don't, this is what we promise you. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we're going to get drunk? Every once in a while we're going to know the right thing to do, and we're just not going to do it.
Yeah, you bet.
And we're human, we're going to fall short in word, thought, and deed every day. We don't use that as an excuse to continue our bad behavior, but sometimes we're going to stumble. Does this mean we're going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but this is only a half truth. It depends on us and on our motives. If we are sorry for what we have done and have the honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and will have learned our lesson. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. We are not theorizing. These are facts out of our experience. This is why I believe when there's people running through the rooms preying on the people who haven't really gotten a chance to get on their feet,
mm-hmm.
and they don't get drunk, this is what convinces me that they're not alcoholic to begin with. They're in the wrong rooms anyway, and they're there for their own particular agenda. Because if you're really alcoholic and you continue to use your sex power, your charm and magnetism to lure people into the bedroom, if you continue to do that, you're going to be drunk. And I've seen this happen countless times. I've warned people over and over, and every once in a while I get somebody that I'm working with who just doesn't listen, and I could set the clock almost to them taking a drink. So if you really want to get over the drinking problem, take this stuff seriously.
Very seriously. And Chris, I've got to share this with you. Here's the thing. When working with other people, and I've noticed it, and of course I was guilty of this too at a time in my life. I came to a place where I was saying, okay, God, I will do anything you ask me to do. I will go anywhere you ask me to go. I have sponsees that have done this. Monty, I will do whatever you suggest. You read that book to me, God. I'll pray. I'll seek God's will. I'll do that. But don't get into my relationship stuff, because I'm going to have sex when I want to have sex. That part, God, you can't come in. And I'm telling you, it doesn't seem to happen with anything else. But when it comes, we'll do everything right. But when it comes down to somebody meddling in our sexual inventory, you can't touch that.
We're not the arbiters, but what we're there for is we're there to show them if their harms continue to if their actions continue to cause harms, they're going to drink. And, it needs to be looked at. Does it mean they're never going to get action again? No. What it means is it means they have to be considerate of others. Remember the 3rd step prayer and remember the 7th step prayer? Those prayers really weren't for us. They were to fit ourselves to be of maximum benefit to God and other people, because that's the solution to alcoholism, living life along spiritual lines instead of selfish lines.
Yeah.
So it's a matter, do you want to overcome drinking? Do you want to overcome alcoholism? Do you want the problem to be removed? Do you want to be at a place safe and protected from the next drinker-drugger, or don't you? These are facts out of our experience. They're not theories.
Yeah.
So again, I don't need to get involved on a very intimate or detailed level with an individual, except to make sure that they're clear on the fact that they can't continue to cause harms.
Yeah.
Because we don't have the luxury as alcoholics to do that. Normal people may, but we don't have the luxury to do that. We also don't have the luxury to drink. Because there's things that unfortunately we don't have the luxury for. If you don't accept that, if you don't take responsibility for that, you ain't gonna make it.
No.
And that's basically what I tell somebody. I don't get really deeply involved with it other than that, because that's the big problem. To sum up about sex, here's a prayer directive. We earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, and for the strength to do the right thing. So that's a prayer directive. You need to be, when it says to pray, part of working a program is to be saying these prayers. If you want to raise your hand and say, I'm working a program, you better be saying these prayers. Otherwise, don't say you're working a program, because that's part of the program.
Mm-hmm.
If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. Where we've been heartbroken, or where, we've got unrequited love, or where there's, it's hitting the fan. Time and time again, working with others and trying to help them will save us. So if we're embroiled in, romantic difficulties, what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to just stop and move on to an alcoholic that we can help. That works. That works. Sometimes trying to keep those relationships going is not something that's going to work. So if we're helping others, we think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache. Now, here are the promises that they put up on the wall. You ever been to a support group meeting, Monty, where they've got the 12 promises up on the wall?
Yeah, like those are the promises.
Yeah, they're the. I mean,
Yeah,
this is all you're going to get, folks. I mean, it really is shortchanging a group to put these up on the wall. First of all, every action step has a series of absolutely wonderful promises that follow it. These are the promises that come. These are the promises that come from the fourth step. If we have been thorough about our personal inventory, we've written down a lot. We've listed and analyzed our resentment. We've begun to comprehend their futility and fatality. We have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. Now, here we go. We've begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, for we look upon them as sick people. We've listed the people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. I like this part where it says we start to look at people, we look at them as sick people, the people that we really hate. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. If I perceive somebody as being not right, it's like it's not their fault. Like they're not doing it to me, they're just doing it. If I can perceive it that way, I don't feel like I'm under attack. I just see somebody who may not be as spiritually advanced as they might be. We're all on this world. I believe we're all on this planet to learn spiritual lessons and to grow in understanding and communion with our Creator. I think that's why we're here. And some of us are a little further on than others. So if we look upon somebody as, maybe not being as far along the spiritual path as they might be, we can look on it with compassion instead of resentment. We can look on it like, wow, they're just acting out, instead of they're attacking me. it's a shift in perception, and that's a really, really great promise, to be able to not be freaked out by people anymore.
Yeah.
In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. There's a wonderful promise, too. Faith will do for us what we can't do ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from Him. If you have already made a decision and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, you have made a good beginning. So what's a fourth step? It's a beginning. It's not your membership into the rooms. What it is you've identified the problems pretty well. You've engaged God in this process. You see where you've been destructive and caused harm, but that's just a beginning. For the removal of those, to be able to really start living life along spiritual lines, you need to continue to go further. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. And that's the end of the chapter, How It Works.
Chris, it's interesting when it says, we hope, for us, what we could not do for ourselves, we're talking about faith, we hope you are convinced now, before we weren't. Now we hope you're convinced that God can remove whatever self-will was blocked you off. When I first went through my first formal working of the steps, what I would call my, when I sit down and got serious and with a sponsor, I got to this point and my sponsor looked at me and he said, "Did you hear what that says?" I said, "Read it again, Monty." And he says, "You know what? What I see you doing, Monty, I don't think you are convinced, because you're still trying to remove your own character defects." And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm working on my defects." He goes, "You're not getting it. It says we ask God to remove our character defects."
If we could remove our character defects by wishing,
yeah,
we would be doing a whole lot better job in this world right now, wouldn't we?
We sure would. And so we come to this point, okay, Monty, are you convinced now, for crying out loud, that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you? How can you remove self-will from self-will?
The mind is the problem. We feel that the problem lies in our mind. So our mind trying to heal our mind, doctors don't work on themselves. They go to other doctors, But, the craziest thing that you'll hear from an alcoholic is, "I'm going to do it better next time."
Oh, yeah.
Or it won't happen again. Or, I've learned my lesson. We'll say that, and sometimes we'll even believe it and mean it. But the fact of the matter is we're caught up in a struggle, the struggle called alcoholism, and without help, it is too much for us.
Yeah.
But there is one who can relieve us of that obsession. That one is God. May you find Him now, or you must find Him now, according to the original manuscript.
Mm-hmm.
So, absolutely, this is not a self-help program. This is an accessing the power of God program.
Mm-hmm.
Make no mistake about it.
Yeah, and that's what drives me crazy about if I go to upload maybe some of the shows to a different website or podcast program or something. It'll give you a list of categories for your show. And under health, it'll have several things, and one of them is self-help. It's the only category they've given that even comes even close to what the rest of the world might think a 12-step fellowship would be. And I always hate that because it's not a self-help thing.
It's inappropriate. There are recovery sections now in bookstores, and it's more appropriate to put it there. But I'll tell you what, there really isn't a category for this. Now, every once in a while, I get into deep discussions, with some of my European friends, and some of my European friends are flat atheists. They'll tell you, "Look, I'm an atheist. I go to meetings. I've been able to stay sober," and maybe they have. But I'll tell you what, Monty, they still suffer from guilt, shame, and remorse. They still suffer from depression and anxiety and fear. They're still restless, irritable, and discontented. Okay, they've not achieved recovery. They think sobriety is recovery.
Yeah.
They don't understand that it's a complete rebuilding of one's life system. And I think if you remain an atheist, not believing in any power greater than yourself, I think what you're doing is you're chaining yourself to the starting line.
Good point. Well said. You bet. You know what? Next week we're going to be talking about a whole nother chapter, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, oh, here I am, a listener. Maybe I have never read the big book. Maybe I've never gone through this thing, and I've got my notes and everything on how it works. And here you just hit me with this reality that you have made a good beginning. And I turn the page and it says into action. Oh my gosh! I thought we were doing that. So that's what we're going to be doing next week, listeners, is going into Chapter 6, into action, out of this just wonderful and I believe God-ordained and anointed book called The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Chris, thank you, my friend. This is every time we get done with another chapter, I get goosebumps. It just and my pages are... You know, I told you before that I've got highlights on my highlights now, and, you know, I feel like one of those really, really, really old timers, because now I got pages falling out.
You know, I've started a new practice, Monty, and every single time I go through the steps or go through the book, I use a new book.
Oh, do you?
I do, because I'm opening myself to a new experience. When I see a whole bunch of highlights and everything like that, it brings me back to an experience I've had, and that's wonderful. That's good because I've learned so much. But what I'll do is I'll say, God, show me what you want me to do this time. And
wow.
You know, this is when I go through the steps, not when I do big book studies.
Right.
But I'll show God, show me what I need to see this time, and I'll do it with a blank book. And, you know, this only comes from someone who's gone through the big book quite possibly 200 to 300 times. And each time I'm brought to a new understanding, a new level of awareness, a new perspective on some of these concepts. And it's a wonderful experience. You know, these spiritual books, the Bible is certainly one of them, will hit you where you are.
Yeah.
You know, wherever you are spiritually, it's going to resonate and speak to you. So this is a living book to me.
Oh, yes.
It's alive.
Well, what a great idea. Now that's what I'm going to have to do. I'm picking up a new sponsee here, and I'm just going to have to grab another book. That is such a great idea. Thank you for that.
Yeah, open God up a little bit more to it than previous experience.
Good idea. Good stuff. Well, my friend, thank you so much once again. It is, as always, an honor and a learning experience. And I hope, listeners, that you've enjoyed this week's Walking Through the Big Book with Chris Schroeder. Next week, Into Action. If you don't have a big book, my friends, I've got a couple ideas for you. Go ahead and give me a call at Take12Radio at Comcast. Email at Take12Radio at Comcast.net. We've got a couple of resources. And listen, don't forget, God can do for you what you cannot do for yourself. If you don't believe it, it's okay. We believe it, and all you got to do is be willing. Right, Chris?
Absolutely.
Yeah, all right. Well, friends, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to be back with us next week when, once again, Chris Schroeder and the Monty'man walk through the big book. Bye-bye.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.